today we're joined here by Angelo and Michael. Thank you so much for joining us for this interview. So, could we start off by asking you a little bit about your background? What made you get interested in photography and in Florida's ecosystems?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm born and raised here in Central Florida my whole life. I've always been around the landscapes of Florida, always spent time in um, wildlife. I grew up playing golf, so I grew up being outdoors, pretty much one of those kids that was locked outside until the lights came on, sort of thing. But as I got older, I started to see a lot of my local area, my hometown, go from a small hometown to a bustling town, and everything started to disappear. Um, I used to smell the smell of orange blossoms in the morning in the spring, which was incredible. We don't get that anymore. The wetlands, I've noticed water levels changing. Where I have my boat, I can't even get my boat out right now because it's so dry. And with all the new housing, the housing and developments being built, it's changing water levels. Um, but photography really is what opened my eyes up into conservation. That came a little later for me. I've only been photographing now for about 2 years. Um, really started with birds because in Florida we don't have the big wild. We have alligators and bobcat and deer and some black bear
Yeah.
and we have monkeys in Silver Springs, which is cool. Which is another thing they're starting to venture out due to deforestation and stuff like that. But yeah, I picked up a camera 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago now, and it started with just walking out into my backyard, photographing cardinals and blue jays and um, alligators because they're always out, and I'm not scared to get close to them. I respect the distance, but some people get a little conscious about that. But I'm like, it's okay. I grew up around them. Um, but so over time for me, photography became more of a way of more than just taking pictures of wildlife, right? Like it became a way to show the truth about what's happening and what's going on through conservation photography. So I started in like a more of a bird photographer and then transitioned into a conservation documentarian and storyteller because I used to just crop everything in on the bird. Now it's more about bringing in the landscape, bringing more of the story to the people and revealing the truth because I think a lot of people are so focused on the hustle and bustle of like get to point A to point B that they really don't see the change. So yeah, that's about myself. I've never lived outside of the state of Florida. Born and raised Floridian. I went to school at Florida Gulf Coast University down south, where I studied business and played golf. And then I graduated there in 2018, and I moved back to. I'm from St. Cloud, so when I moved back to St. Cloud to Central Florida, it was incredible the change in 4 years. What had happened while I was gone and just
Yeah.
noticing that and then picking up the cameras what really I started to really notice certain things. But yeah, it's a little bit about me.
That's really, I mean, I resonate a lot with that because down here, so I'm from Miami, but like
Okay.
Redland is where we have like our farm. That's kind of what inspired me because I'm like for like 7 generations, my family's been involved in agriculture. Not all here in Florida, but wherever my family's been, we've done agriculture. And kind of seeing how in Miami people don't even realize that we have like a countryside or that we
Yeah.
have like a really natural part. Like they don't even, a lot of Miami residents haven't even been to the Everglades. And so
Yeah.
that's something that I really started to value a lot more, especially since I was young, but when I got older as well, that's what made me start Glade Wise and everything. And I mean, when I was younger, like probably 5 years old or even 10 years old, you can drive down and then you wouldn't see like a development for 20, 30 minutes from my farm. And now you drive like 5 minutes and there's like
Yeah.
2,000 homes
Oh,
and they're all around everywhere. I mean, they're everywhere. And so, yeah, I mean, I resonate a lot with that, and that's a lot of the reason why do what we do is we try to, get other students educated on this
yeah.
because, like, you already have 4,000 followers, and 4,000 people have like seen, or almost 4,000 people have seen your work, and they resonate with it. And seeing like the old Florida like community on Instagram, TikTok,
Yeah.
everywhere is like so amazing because so many people are so interested in preserving like our state, especially with everyone moving in now. It's it's amazing to see. a lot of people really valuing it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Like that was just I do a lot of reading and writing and I go every day and I work. I have a day job sometimes, part time. My goal is to transition into full time photography and conservation work. But I was sitting there the other day. This was last week, and I was like, I think I should do this series or a project called Dear Florida,
yeah,
right?
I've
It's
seen
ecology,
them.
right? And I never expected it to take off. So the first post I did, I think it's up to almost 50,000 views, right? And it's been building off of that. And it's what's really heartwarming and it's saddening at the same time is seeing the older generations, older than me, um, really, commenting their stories and their childhood and seeing, what they're going through and they're seeing, hey, we moved out, but we still come back and visit. And every time we come back and visit, we just don't recognize anything. And
Yeah.
that was another that's going to be a project of mine going forward for quite a long time, which is one reason why I've been staying in Central Florida. I had the itch to get out due to the growth, but like when my roots really started to grow out here with photography work, and I realized my mission's just getting started. Right, there's so much work to be done within my community that a lot of people are starting to notice it, and people that have just moved here are starting to notice it. I think there is. I was driving to a farm the other day, and 6,000 acres were just cleared. They're building a town in the middle of nowhere for no reason. Yeah, and it's just sad to see. I think we're gonna have just in my small town, well, not small town anymore. St. Cloud is gonna have. I think we got like between 10 and 20,000 homes going up right now,
Wow.
and it's crazy. It's just every acre that they can find is gone. Right. But yeah, that's what's happening. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, very similar down here. Now the Turnpike, US 1,
Mm-hmm.
everything, it's so clogged up because there's just a bunch of like homes out there, but there's no job infrastructure, nothing else. It's just homes.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah. So, our next question is kind of a little bit, what are some of your favorite animals or plants to capture? I know you talked about birds. Like, what are some of the best
Yeah.
experiences you've had there?
So I think, my first encounter, the first bird that really got me hooked was the Everglades snail kite, right? Which you guys have down there. It's one of the only birds outside of the Florida scrub jay that are really endemic to Florida. They're tied to Florida. Um, there's just something about them. There's the males are just this beautiful slate gray and this red eye. And I remember seeing one for the first time at a conservation area down the road from me called Twin Oaks. And I'm out there walking and I never, was new to birding and I saw it. But when you look at the snail kite is they're a very good judgment to judge how good the wetlands are doing, right? Because their whole existence is around a wetland area. The the snail kites, if they're doing well, that means the wetland around them is functioning the way it's supposed to because their main food resource is the apple snail, which is invasive. So they do great things. That's the one thing that got me hooked. But I grew up, you know, I go to work so early in the morning that I hear owls every morning, whether it's a barred owl, great horned
Yeah.
owl. So every encounter, and people are like, "Oh, there's no owls around." I'm like, if you listen, right? If you just slow down and listen, that's what another thing photography has done for me is made me slow down, listen, really listening to what's going on around you, and taking things in, really seeing things. Um, so yeah, even the sandhill cranes, like growing up with them, I thought they were kind of annoying because they're loud, they're big, they're kind of obnoxious, but they're such a it's a bird that is a staple in Florida. They're found throughout the Midwest and up north, but they're so beautiful. And watching them just move, and when the colts are born and moving around, it's such a beautiful thing to see. Of course, alligators. I'm a big swamp
Yeah.
fan. They're so ancient, and there's something that I love photographing. I captured a picture at the Orlando wetlands up here, which is an incredible man-made watering treatment facility that's all natural.
Mhm.
It was built in, I think, the 70s. It's incredible. Never introduced any birds or animals there. They all came there on their own. And I photographed an alligator one morning. I got kind of close and I had a long lens and I was just messing around. But in its eye, you can see the entire landscape in the sun rising. And I was just like, wow. So I'm like, this is an ancient animal that's been in Florida for thousands of years, and you're watching in its eyes the sunrise up, right? And I was like, okay, like I'm hooked. Um,
Yeah.
Plants are cool. I think that's another thing I'm starting to get into is going to different botanical gardens and seeing what
Yeah.
native species they have and starting to document those. My wife is a very she's a renowned elephant biologist and reproductive physiologist. So she's been to Africa. She just went through Nepal last year, and she was the first woman to go through the far west side to the far east side. And she
That's
was
so
traveling
cool.
the Asian elephant original migratory trail. So that was what she did. So, I mean, she's been published. She's an incredible woman. So she's a great partner in crime to have because she loves, plants. She's always got there's an app called, I think it's Naturalist or Seek. And she scans everything and she goes, okay, this
Yeah.
is native. And she's got her checklist
Me
going,
too.
like
I love
Merlin.
doing that.
Yeah. So I'm like, and then of course, okay, we haven't documented that before. Let's take a photo. Um, it's there's something about seeing these old oaks because I've seen so many of them being just ripped up from the ground and
Yeah.
dislodged, right? And there's when you walk up to an oak that is just massive and you can feel and you put your hand on it, you can feel what it's been through, what it's seen, like how it's feeling. Like you could look at the tree health and tell, but there's something about the way like an old oak hammock with just Spanish moss hanging off of it. I will photograph that every morning if I see one. Like I probably have the same picture of the same tree in the neighborhood 1,000 times over, but that's just how it is. But yeah, so honestly, and it's anything in Florida. It's the snail kite for me. The burrowing owl.
I love those. By
I
Boca, I
was.
love those.
Do you? I'm assuming you guys have quite a bit of them down there. Like,
We I've actually never seen like when I went to go visit some relatives in Boca, I saw some
okay,
near like FAU, but
okay.
I mean down here I've never seen a burrowing owl ever.
It's great. There's the first one I ever saw. It was a goal of mine earlier this year to finally find one. And I'm not the person that likes to ask a friend, "Hey, have you seen this?" I want to go out and wander and find it myself. Like to me, that's the definition of a real wildlife photographer. Not somebody that has a lot of money and pays to go on trips to see these things or a spotter. Like I want to go find it myself. And we were driving along this pasture. Um, on my way out to go to a ranch, the Overstreet Ranch, and I just see this little head pop up, and I was like, I slammed on the brakes on the truck and I turned around, and I stayed a distance, and I was just in such awe that like I think my first few frames were really bad because my settings were way off because like I was just like oh my gosh, like there it is, and it was so cool to see, and that's another species that's being just destroyed because
Yeah.
all of their environment. So like the coast, there are a lot of them in the coast, and there was a lot of them here too. In the Florida scrub jay, I saw one for the first time in January of this year, um, up in Merritt Island. They're all over, but that's another because they rely on a specific habitat, pinewood flats. So like when you get to where they're at, there actually used to be some just 7, 8 years ago. They were documented down the road from my house, and they haven't been seen since. Right, so I have to drive an hour to see them to go to
Hmm.
places where they used to be, which they used to be here. So anything Florida related, to be honest, is got
That's
me hooked.
me too. Any native plants, any native like yeah,
Yeah.
definitely very interested in that. So was there like a specific moment or photo that made you realize you want? I know you spoke about it before, like your first photos. What was, if you can pick one, like the photo that got you into environmental storytelling?
Yeah, so there's actually two, and the sad part is it happened like in the same exact spot. So this was last year. It had been I was probably 5, 6 months in to my photography journey, and we were heading to this conservation area where I saw my first snail kite. And we pull in. It's dark. I like to get there before the sun rises and just kind of take everything in and listen. And we pull in, and on this fence post, before you even get to the entrance, there's this great horned owl. And it just something was off, right? It didn't look right. So I got out of the truck, I grabbed my camera, put on my long lens, and I just looked. And one of its eyes, its pupils was completely ruptured. Its feathers were matted down. It was just a mess. Clearly had been hit by a car, right? Had a collision with a vehicle. And at that point, then and there, I was like, there's more to this, right? Like someone needs to document not just what is happening, but tell their story, right? Because I felt like I'm now a voice for the voiceless, right? I'm someone that can show the impacts of what's happening. And then we just came down, what we called FWC. They came out. Luckily, she was just healthy enough to get away because this was right around nesting season for them. So we don't know if she had a partner. I photographed 5 or 6 other great horned owls in that conservation area, which isn't too far away. So I'm hoping it wasn't one of the pairs, one of the parents. But then a couple of weeks ago, we were headed back on the same spot. I kid you not. On the road was a sandhill crane with a broken wing. It's on my feed, and its poor wing was just broken, just hanging. And the first thing I did was grab my camera and I started taking pictures. And there she was, just struggling to eat the smallest little bug that was hopping around. And there's these fresh tire marks, like she's standing right between them. And I was just like, that's such like an iconic photo, right? Like it's so sad. Like people are like, well, did you call anybody? I'm like, well, I know if I call somebody, they're just going to put her down, right? Like I know it's going to happen because a lot of the wildlife places around us are so overrun with what they're trying to do and taking in rescues and helping and rehabilitate these animals before they can get them back out. And it was just like it was in the same spot, like 15 feet apart. And it was a road that back when I was in high school, it's this really tiny little paved road now. Where we used to run our cars down, when you were like we were young, people run their cars fast down that way. And, that's ultimately what's happening. People are doing things they shouldn't be, right? And it's the variable, and that is us, people. Um, but yeah, those were the two moments that really are like, okay, first with the owl, like, okay, maybe think I'm supposed to be doing something with storytelling and um, in my photography work with them in conservation. Plus, my wife, she was like, I think you have an eye for this. Like, there's something there. Um, and just building off of that. And it's like every day I drive down that road to go there, there's always roadkill. I mean, I saw a bald eagle dead on the side of the road just 2 months ago. And it's like, that's a protected bird. Why? And you can tell it had been there for probably a few days. And I'm like, why did no one stop? Like, I always understand that there will be deer hit. There's going to be interactions, but there's no reason why that bird should be there, why it should be hit, why it should be injured there. Every day I see owls on the side of the road, red-shouldered hawks. Um, and as we start expanding, people are starting to leave for work earlier and earlier. And that's ultimately the case, right? Now these nocturnal animals that are hunting, at night are now coming into contact more with people as they leave because of the traffic early and earlier to get to work on time. So everything just kind of works together, has an impact on each other.
Yeah, all the noise and the light pollution and everything just
Yeah.
changing their whole habitats. So, are there any species or habitats specifically that you watched decline that you wish people knew more about? Like for me, it's the Everglades. For one of my friends, it's something else. So, what's a habitat you wish people knew more about?
um, yeah. So for me, like I grew up on a lake. I grew up on East Lake Toho. So for me, I've always been drawn to the water. For me, it was like the small ponds on the golf course I grew up on too. So it was like, okay, these small little ecosystems, like what's in them. Um, and I started noticing like the same place. It's always comes back to Twin Oaks, this conservation area, the same place where these two birds were hit. Right across the street from there is a small wetland that this time last year there was about a dozen to 2 dozen snail kites there. and they were eating, they were hunting, they were just living their life, right? They had everything they needed in this small area. And then I started noticing as I drove in, this wetland was being affected because I started seeing less and less of them. And I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? Well, we've been in a drought this year, severely. But also this this lot that was probably 500 or 600 acres that bordered the wetland. It was divided by a little creek. And I started noticing, I'm like, well, why is there dirt now? Why is it being lifted? I mean, they backfilled it probably 5 or 6 feet. So now when you change the water level on a snail kite, you completely change its food source. So if it's too low or too high, it has to be just perfect for those apple snails to be approachable, to be gettable for a snail kite. And I go at least 2 or 3 times a week now to that small wetland, and people just don't understand. They're like, well, it's just a swamp, right? It's just this open area with shallow water and muck. And, it's not the prettiest thing, but it's home to so many beautiful animals. Otter, oh, geez, great blue heron, um, alligator, turtles, just everything. It's this little habitat. And I've been doing counts on those snail kites now for the last 2 months, and the most I've seen is four. And they're not hunting there anymore. They literally will, if I don't get there at like 5:30 in the morning, they start flying off to other areas to hunt. So their home is now being affected by what we're doing in this impact of another development being built. And these small wetlands all over are being drained, or they're building artificial ponds or something, so it's pulling water level from different areas, or it's all this runoff is going to go into these wetland areas that's not meant to hold that much water, or so to me that's an area that's being affected. I love the wetlands, I love the swamps. I used to love walking around the mangroves in college, down in Fort Myers in Naples. That was really beautiful. And that's another area that's being affected. A developer, I think it was down south in Cape Coral or Naples, they ripped out an acre or 2 acres of mangroves. It was something significant. And they said, oops, we didn't know. Sorry. I was like, how do you not know?
It's their entire storm protection right there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, down here, I'm lucky enough I go to school. To school it's pretty focused on like environmental things.
Okay, good.
Um, so we have like a lot of that, but I feel like one thing that they're lacking a lot is in broader like education just for everyone about sustainable agriculture, conservation. It's more just focused on marine biology because of where we are. And
Yeah.
so hearing that that happens also like in the wetlands a little bit further north, it's kind of good to know that you can bring awareness to it happening all over Florida because it's a problem, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not it's a thought. I always thought like, oh, it's just my area, Central Florida. I always do about the Everglades. And there's a documentary I watched, a couple that showed, what we did building canals and logging,
Yeah.
and just devastating the natural water flow. Because like the southern part of the state used to just kind of be open and swampy, and the water just flowed through there straight into the Everglades and then out into the ocean. And that's completely changed. But it's in the Panhandle, it's in Jacksonville. All these areas are just being ravished by development, and it's not just in our state too. It's in others, um, which is crazy. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. The other states, I know that Texas is having some hard times. So just a lot of the South, especially, because now with the drought down here, they'll give us like water warnings or they'll give us like
yeah,
advisements like that. Um, and there's not much you can really do because I mean the groundwater can't flow. It just doesn't reach the aquifers. Nothing's being replenished. The Biscayne aquifer was running really low. So yeah. So how do agriculture and land development intersect in like the wild spaces you photograph? Have you seen kind of changes in the farms or in developments? Like, how do you see them actively affecting the entire ecosystems that you focus on?
Yeah, so a lot of my recent work and past trips have been spent out in pastures and documenting um, our wildlife that way. We're burrowing owl habitats and, kind of like the original Floridian way of life, right? The cowboy way of life. And that's another project I want to do. I have too many projects I want to do.
The
Um,
Florida Cowboys, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I find that so cool. I mean,
It's
they're the original ones, to be fair. They came from
it's
Spain.
and that's where Florida Cracker came from. Like people don't
Yeah.
realize that Florida's history is like, I grew up partially, is a little off topic, but not really. But Florida's not part of the South. I was like, what are you talking about? Like
We're
Florida,
the southernmost.
you know, we're the starting point of cattle. The first cattle appeared in Florida, right?
Yeah.
So, I like going to the Silver Spurs Rodeo over in Kissimmee. It's just really cool. You get to see people still live that original way of life. They're trying to hold on to it. But as far as ag goes, I think ranchland and pastures, they've done such a good job trying to preserve, right, like what's left. And you're seeing these people fight to hold this land that they've had for generations. And I photographed so many birds and wildlife just in spots that you wouldn't think of, like little drainage ditches off the side of these pastures, right? Um, in these working lands, like sod farms. Like we have a lot of sod farms down here, um, and it's good and bad because of the chemical runoff. And I know working at a golf course, I do work at a golf course, so it's like, I see what we put down, I see how we go about things. We do things very minimally. All around our ponds, we let the water grow up, so there's a buffer zone. So when there is runoff, if any, there's something to catch it and to filter it before it goes into our ponds. That was an idea I had. And I told my boss, and he liked the idea. And he was like, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing thing, but it works for the environment, right? And I said, that this is something we need to look into. Um, but yeah, I think the challenge is when those lands stop being open lands. And they become permanent development, there's no changing that, right? You're not going to start ripping up concrete to put a pasture back where that's hard, right? And I think, was it in 2024 alone or since 2024? I think it's like the Florida Bureau of Agriculture reported like 30,000 acres of
Yeah.
rangeland was gone. And I try to look at it from both sides, because when these families who have had this land for so long, and they're getting offers of just insane amount of money that you just can't say no to, because it's becoming so hard to just make a living farming, right? Especially with everything that's going on in the current economy in the world, right? Fertilizer's expensive, fuel's expensive, right? Like I have two trucks, and my work truck is a old diesel truck. It's almost $200 to fill it up, right? So, and that's just a truck. Imagine, shipping your cattle, shipping fertilizer, everything that you need. But as the roads and stuff get busier, right, our water flow is changing. All these open spaces are getting smaller, and wildlife has fewer places to move and feed and nest. And you're seeing, like, we have bobcat around me quite a bit. Never once have I seen one in our neighborhood. And a neighbor in our local Facebook page just said, "Hey, I have a bobcat in my backyard. Like, I've never seen one." I'm like, well, they're being pushed, right?
Yeah.
Everything around me is just shrinking. So I don't really think it's ever like, I know some ag gets a bad rep, just because of either chemical runoff from farming, or how, just methane release from cattle. Like there's stuff like that, right? But like, I don't ever think it's agriculture versus wildlife. I've seen it firsthand that like wildlife can coexist with agriculture. so many cranes. Like I'll drive by pastures on the way to work, and there's dozens of little baby turkeys running around, and deer and coyote. And we used to have a lot of fox around me. We haven't seen foxes in
I haven't seen foxes in years.
5 or 6 years near me.
Yeah.
It probably has been longer. So that's another animal that we just don't. I personally don't think of being affected. But then you're like, wow, I haven't seen that in a while. Well, with everything that's going on. Um, but that's something I think a lot about with photography. It's not just the protected areas, but it's all the land surrounding them. Because a wetland or conservation area doesn't exist in a vacuum. Um, what happens around that system is what really matters. The pasture next door to you matters. Your neighbor matters. The traffic matters. It all affects wildlife in one way or another, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think I've seen this transition in a lot of farmers who are now like, maybe they weren't for conservation as much before, but you're really seeing this really dynamic shift in the last decade, of like, okay, wow, like we're really going to start speaking up because they still have a lot of influence in our area, because there's still a lot of big ranches that are still left somehow. But I know Deseret Ranch near us is selling off tens of thousands of acres because by 2050 it's going to be developed into another city between St. Cloud and Melbourne on the east side of Florida. So, when I hear that, I'm like, it's just devastating because that's all pasture, that's all wild land, and knowing how that's going to be affected is just, it's devastating.
Yeah. I mean, hearing that, it's like a lot of the same thing happens down here. So my family farm, I mean, there was a lot of nurseries around us because down here we do more like tropical fruits,
Yeah.
landscaping, everything. Um, but what they were doing to farmers around us is that farmers would like lease a little part of their land or like lease just a little plot for like a food truck or for a fruit stand or for anything really. And that's how they would sustain the farm with income that comes from not actually farming, obviously. And then code enforcement would be sent out and they would bust like the fruit stands or the vegetable stands or the food truck or really anything that was helping the farmers. And then the developer would come in with an offer like, hey, you can't make money anyway. Let me offer to
Yeah.
buy it in cash. And we have stories of like our neighbors who would have people come onto their land, say, oh, we want to buy your farm. They'd say, no, I want to keep my small business and then I can have my farm on the side. And then code enforcement would be called and
Mm.
they would come back and make the same offer. And one point, a neighbor told us that as the people who were making the offer were walking away, they're like, he's gonna regret that. And that's the story of like everything that's happened down here. And my family and a few of our neighbors were involved in getting an ordinance passed so we can have like what we call agritourism, where they can come down, see what it's like, learn about the
Yeah.
farm, eat all that stuff, and that helps the income and the revenue and everything. But I mean, before that, it was just a battle of like the developers and the county versus the people who wanted to actually keep their farm but couldn't afford to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I
yeah,
think that speaks to the importance of like, I've had messages now of like, how can we help? Like, what can we do? And I said, it's all about how you vote locally, right? Like,
yeah,
I always tell people now is it doesn't matter if you're left or right, conservative or Democrat. Put your differences aside and really just work together. You have to vote properly because, well, our current mayor was elected on pushing for conservation, and he has turned around and done the complete opposite, right? So, in the whole council, anytime anything is vote to save any type of land, they're like, no, gone, because
yeah,
there's they're obviously getting kickbacks. There's always everything intertwines with each other. Kind of goes back to your story about the farm. Why developers walking away? They're going to regret that. Well, yeah, because they know,
yeah.
right? So, but yeah, yeah, it's shocking to see, and with everything that's going on, I love what you guys are doing. It's really
Thank
cool. I was
you.
going to ask, like, with this being like such a big thing for you, do you want to study like biology, marine biology?
Yeah. So I actually I want to be a zoning lawyer because I want to
Okay.
be the lawyer that fights against the developers. That's really what I want to do. I want to protect agriculture and conservation in that way. But before that, for my bachelor's degree, I still obviously don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to do something in the sciences, either ag sciences, life sciences. Yeah, so right now what I'm doing, I'm like working at Costa Farms. It's like a nursery,
Okay,
but
cool.
I'm still like learning about like agronomy, everything like that. And it's been amazing, but I know that when I go to college, I want to do something that kind of gets me that environmental education edge. So that way when
Yeah.
I go be a zoning lawyer, I can really make a difference, make an impact, and so that way farms like mine or like my neighbors, anyone's, they don't have to sell, they don't have to keep fighting and then getting nowhere and just growing broke, honestly, from
Yeah.
the legal fees and then at the end of the day, still having their farm paved over. That's the goal. That's my goal at least.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
So
That's really
I
good.
hope
Yeah,
next.
I like that because I have a niece who just graduated high school, and I'm like, okay, so like, what do you want to do? Oh, I don't know, right? But she likes to fish. She likes to be outdoors. Her boyfriend is a big bass fisherman, and he's a good kid. And I said, hey, like, do something. Oh, I don't know what I want to do. I'm like, hey, I said you'll figure it out. You're young, but I wish I could go back you know 15 years when I was in high school and say, hey, I wish I knew about conservation more. I wish I picked up a camera, back then. We always had a camera on our phone, but it's not the same. um,
Yeah.
it's still a very vital tool to document what's going on. But yeah, it's your generation is so important, and like our job, I feel like my generation is to preserve what we can as much as we can and just keep the fight. Because I read an article, I think it was from a year ago. Basically, the area that's been paved over in Florida or Central Florida within our 7 or 8 counties is from like paving over from Orlando to Daytona Beach. Like that's how much pavement has been dropped. And it's
Yeah.
just like you think of it and you're like, oh wow, like that's a big area because it takes an hour and a half to get to Daytona or an hour to get to Daytona. Somewhere about 250,000 acres, I think, have been lost. And it really just starts adding up because it's one division here, one subdivision there, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So yeah, it's there's so much that you can read because like I go online and I check in on Facebook to see what my friends and family are doing, and it's like you get one side of the story. I don't see conservation being talked about enough.
I
It's more
agree.
on a smaller scale within the photography community locally, the wildlife photographers. Um, and then you put something out and people start to see like, oh, this is what's really happening. Um, like I went to town the other day and I didn't even know. I don't really go to that side of town very often, and I almost felt like I'll never have to put my maps on when I'm going anywhere in town because like I know where I'm going. I should at least. And we were going somewhere and I drove. I'm like, this is the right. I swear this is the right road, and I just couldn't recognize it because there was apartments everywhere. They're building a
Yeah.
ginormous Target. Like, cool, it's great to have a Target close by, but like not necessarily like we have one half an hour away. Why do people want one closer? Um, it's that convenience factor that people are pushing for. But then I saw this lone cow in this pasture, and I photographed it, and it was my most recent. I think it was my most recent post, and there it was under this like little shanty of a sunshade, and these 5-story apartments or whatever it may be behind it, brand new, just casting a shadow over it. And I'm like, this is exactly
Yeah.
what I'm meant to photo. Like here it is in one picture, right? I remember that pasture just going forever. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like I see that and like sometimes it like makes me a little sad. Like I'll tear up as I'm driving
Me
by
too.
these places, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
like you could take someone and put them like someone that had just moved here from New York, wherever it may be. I'm like, I do know some locals, like when I go to some local spots that I go to, like after work with some coworkers, and if someone walks in from out of state, they're not treated very well. And like, I always will kick them and say, hey, oh, hey, Bobby, like be nice. Like
Yeah.
they're a Florida resident now too, right? Like they matter. But that's how it is, right? Um, But if you take someone like that and just put them in front of that pasture and that road work right in front and that those apartments behind, they wouldn't see anything wrong with that. Right. So I think that's why capturing and doing what you guys are doing and informing people is so important, because there's going to be, unfortunately, I do think there's going to be a time where there won't be much left, at least in my town, right? The population of my town has doubled since COVID. So, like, to think of that rapid growth. And yeah, it's just the way of life is different. But I think the question, like I always try to tell people, is like, how do we grow without completely losing the spaces that make the state what it is? It's this
Yeah,
effort of balance. There's no, you have to come to the understanding of we're not going to pump the brakes on development, right? Like, we can try to stop, you're not going to stop it, but there are going to be ways that we can develop more efficiently and ways that are going to help those areas. Like, okay, why not build like New York? Let's build vertically, right? Like,
that's what I always say.
right,
Yeah.
build up.
You would think that that makes sense for them, but
Yeah, and we do get hurricanes, and I always thought, when people first moved here, I was always hoping for a big one. Like, that was like me prior to getting into conservation photography. I'm like, I hope it scares everyone away. And then we had like a small one, like I think it was a Cat 3, and people were like, "Oh, this isn't bad." I'm like, I was hearing, a kid in 2004 when we had, Charlie Francis Jean, and I can't remember the other one, but like I remember Charlie coming through and the eye passed right over my house, and that was a cat 4 or 5. I think it was a cat 4. And it was cool. Like, I just stood there as a kid, and you got 100+ mile an hour winds whipping around, and I can see the eye. And it was so cool to watch as a kid. But yeah, it's it's sad, and but it's also motivating. Like, it's
yeah.
what motivates me to do what I'm doing. I mean, I just started this whole, I would say the conservation concept happened like last year. Um, Obviously seeing that owl that way, but then I was always focused on the animals rather than the landscape. And then this past year has been more about the landscape, and um, because that's what's more important. They're equally as important, but people actually seeing the physical landscape change is what
Yeah.
needs to be seen.
That's yeah. I mean, now I've gotten to the age where I'm like a year younger than your niece. I'm like gonna be a senior.
Okay, awesome.
So I've gotten to the age where I start to remember what things looked like when I was little, and
Yeah,
I start to notice those changes. Because back then, my mom would be like, "Oh yeah, this used to all be farms," or my dad would make a comment, and I'd be like, "Okay." I didn't really think much of it. I was just more focused on like you were on the animals, on the little things. But now that I've gotten to the point where I can drive, I'm driving by and
yeah,
I see the change. It's like there's no way that this is something that should be allowed to continue. Like a sustainable development, as much of an oxymoron as it is, I think it has to be considered. It has to be
yeah,
taken into account. Sustainable agriculture and just making the everyday like human activities that have to occur for our population to keep growing. I
absolutely.
think of ways of making those more efficient, like you said, is crucial for the future. Because if not, my generation's not gonna have much for anything. But that's the goal for that to change, hopefully. Um, so my next question. So as a native Floridian, how do you what do you think can be done to combat these changes? You mentioned how some people ask you, but as a native Floridian, what are some things that you think they could do, like voting, to really make an impact?
It's absolutely right. Like, it's showing up at these local meetings. I talking to my mom last week. This was two weeks ago, and she goes, "Hey, like, she lives half an hour from me," and she goes, "Hey, did you hear about the school being built?" And I'm like, "Oh, where?" So there's an empty lot across from her community, and it's 10 acres. They're like, "Hey, we're going to squeeze a K through 8 in there, and we're going to put single family homes." I'm like, "You're going to squeeze all that on 10 acres?" So she showed up. She went to the meeting, and she was asking these very strong questions. And I always love hearing her talk because she's from a farm in upstate New York. And like she's been in Florida since the 70s. So she understands like, and she's seen it change, and she's become very passionate now about conservation. And it's really cool to see, right? But like showing up at your meetings and asking questions, and really pushing the envelope of like making the people that are sitting up there like uncomfortable, right? Like bringing facts and truth to light, because all that stuff is typically just overlooked. Some other things that we can do, it's another thing. I have a friend of mine who's a macro photographer, and she's like really cool, like very up close of insects and stuff. And, it got me thinking about, bees and pollinators,
Yes.
planting wildflowers, like the community I live in has an HOA. And I'm like, the house I rent, like I just want to go plant wildflowers, like all up and down the side of my house, but they'll throw a fit. Well, they technically can't do anything about it. Um, as long as they're native flowers to Florida. So like, I'm like probably going to do that to make them mad. But try not to use harsh chemicals in your lawn. Try to stay as natural as you can. Like I don't really put anything in my lawn. It's green, it's lush, it's nice. Like there's weeds here and there, but it's natural. Seeing, uh, supporting your local um, farmers and your local businesses has been so vital to my area. Like we have our downtown is another project I want to focus on, because it's this beautiful historic downtown that's been there since this just after the Civil War. So a lot of the buildings are around 19 getting close to World War One, so like 1905 ish. Um, but a lot of them are empty. There's a couple local businesses in there. Like there's a bee farmer, a beekeeper. She has like all of her honey products and stuff. So like anytime, instead of going to like Publix, we go over there and we try to buy as much as we can local, and support those people, because without business, they don't have a business, right? And again, their land is probably up for development, right? So supporting local, trying to inform people, like talk to people. Like I'm a pretty big introvert. Like if I'm out taking pictures, I'm to myself. But like once I start talking to someone, it's hard for me to start, excuse me, to stop talking. So I just keep going and going and going. So yeah, just spreading the word, talking to people, talk to ranchers, interview like what you're doing,
Yeah.
talking to the locals who do jobs that are so important that keep the land the way it is, and people that are fighting for it, and then informing people that are just moving here. Like I talk to my neighbors all the new if every anytime I see a new neighbor, and like I'll like purposely walk by and throw out and be like, hey, by the way, like this is going on, like you should come on out. And I was like thought about even doing like photography walks in our local neighborhood, like conservation. Like I just joined, my wife and I just joined the nature committee. Like I didn't even know it existed, right? It was
Yeah.
never put out there until I went back on the Facebook post for the community from like 5 years ago. Like we have a nature committee, because someone was like, we just put up birdhouses. So they put up nice little birdhouses. Which is a birder's cool, because we just put up purple martin nesting boxes last
We
year.
have those too.
Yeah. And
Yes, I have one.
I was like, nothing's going to nest in there, because like last year we didn't see anything. And then this year, my wife goes, she just saw last week, a red shoulder hawk sitting on top of the nesting boxes, but they're all full of purple martins, which is really cool. So like, it's really cool to see just my small community really putting in this work of helping conservation to some extent. Right now we're talking about getting our trails back up in the neighborhood, like cleaning them up so people can actually walk through them. I almost stepped on a cottonmouth like a couple months ago. Little babe was just out roaming around. I almost stepped on him. I said, I'm sorry. Like, and I let him go on his way. But like, this community where I live, it's called Harmony. It's Harmony, Florida is in St. Cloud, but they want to be their own town. That's a whole thing. When it was first built, it was like an ag community. They had a horse farm, a little horse stable. The high school was working and learning about agriculture, and they still do. But like someone bought that property, they leveled the barn, and they put a for sale sign on it. It's like, so they're trying to sell off these two big, massive lots that are so vital, because I've seen the wild turkeys run rampant in there. And it's so cool to watch, because the babies will hide in a tree. on the lower branches and the bob whites and all that. So yeah, it's it has to be done on a small scale because every small thing we do is part of a bigger puzzle, right? It all adds up in the end. So yeah, I mean, what else could yeah, I mean that's what again back to growing native stuff. Like don't bring in plants that are not native. Because
Yeah.
things will be invasive. Like we see it at work, like we do pull a lot of invasive plants, like invasive grass types that get brought in on the bottom of shoes from other golfers get brought in onto the golf course. Well, then we have to either spray it or cut it out. Um, so yeah, like there's just small things you can do, um, but learn, just be active, be involved. I know some people don't want to be involved because like, oh, going to a local meeting's an hour or two out of my day, or you know, but yeah, yeah,
So,
no, absolutely.
what advice would you give to a young person who wants to use a creative skill like photography or writing or art for conservation?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to find like whether it's like birds, right? Find like this niche, find like something that you're so passionate about and just do it, right? Start posting, start writing, just get it out there. Share it on Facebook to friends and family. Just take that first step. Like for me, like I was so shy of like posting because like I was like, oh, my first few pictures aren't going to be good enough, and they were pretty bad. But you have to start somewhere, right? You have to start small. Just read. Like I've learned so much from reading. Like and YouTube, I watch a ton of YouTube videos. Like I don't watch TV, I watch YouTube, and it's always conservation videos. But and that's another thing. There's not that many conservation documentaries on YouTube. Like it's insane. The lack of information that's out there. Just not about Florida, but about like everything in general. But yeah, like just follow your passion. Like my wife just started drawing. Like that,
I
she
love drawing.
yes, and she
Yeah.
sketched a like I always pick up feathers. I probably have a couple hundred feathers that I pick up, and like um I have some great horned owl feathers. I have a snail kite feather because it dropped once. So I was sitting there photographing one, and it flew up on this fence post with an apple snail like 20 feet in front of me. And I was like, oh wow. And I saw it kind of hanging out. I'm like, oh, fingers crossed, please fall. Like, and it did. So like I'm like, cool, I have one of those. And like, but yeah, just starting small, like follow your heart, follow your dreams. Like I am a firm believer, like everybody's situation is different. But you really can, if you truly believe in yourself and love what you do, no matter how hard it is, you can accomplish anything. And like I'm a firm believer. I'm starting, we'll call it a new career, like a new chapter at 30 years old, right? Like I'm not young anymore, right? So like, but I've made that choice to go all in. Like again, I'm looking hopefully by the end of the year to quit my day job. Is that a great idea? I don't know, probably not. But like we have put ourselves financially in a spot to where it's something I can do for, I could give it just a full run because you can't, I'm a firm believer, you can't do anything and just kind of like give it a little bit of effort. You have to just give it everything. You would be shocked by how much you can progress, and like the best way to learn is to fail, like and fail miserably. Like I've done that. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to start, like I got photography down pat, I know understand light, the exposure triangle, I get all that. I'm going to start doing video, and I've taken so many videos in the last couple of weeks in videography. I'm so bad at it. Like the camera settings are a little different, I understand that, but when it comes to color grading and editing, it's such a new world to me, right? So that's another creative outlet for me, and it's another way to document um, Florida, right? Because Reels, Instagram loves
They're
Reels,
so popular.
and
Yeah.
TikTok, right? So like, I've bought two film cameras, like from the 70s, some Canons, and I'm really like honed because we have a book from a photo book. We have too many photo books from the Joberts, and they were the first people to really go out on film, like attached to those big safari vehicles and shoot Africa's wildlife on film. And I'm like, oh, how cool is that? And there's a couple documentaries, and I'm like, you would see them go back to their tent with their film, and they had no idea what they had. And that that unknown of like what you have is so exciting. Like my first roll, I dropped off my first two rolls last week. Okay, like it's different because you don't know what you have. Like your viewfinder isn't adjusting or your screen isn't adjusting as you make changes. It's like you guess. Like I have a light meter, so I'm like, okay, well this is properly exposed. Snap. I have a couple that came back, but my goal is I want to document Florida that way too as another outlet because like when you look at a picture that was taken on film, it's like you can't recreate it with a digital camera, and it's I believe trying to document old Florida deserves to be shown on film. Like
Yeah.
it's original like idea. But yeah, like creatives like just do it. Like just go for it. Like ignore what people are saying. You're going to have people like try to put you down, like bully you or whatever. I was bullied as a kid growing up, right? So like but what did I do? I just ignored it. And I it always made me like in the back of my mind like fueled me. I'm like I'm going to prove you wrong, right? Like I did that in college. Like I was a hefty kid in high school and I lost like 60 pounds. And then I became a personal trainer and I did, you know, I got really fit and I was like, okay, cool. Prove you guys wrong. Right. Like fuel to the fire. I did it for myself too. But it's the same thing with photography. Like my three close friends are like, what are you doing? Because they're not into conservation. I have one of them is actually an engineer for a developer. So it's kind of interesting. He goes, I hate what you're doing. It's bad for my business. And I'm like, dude, I don't care.
Well,
Yeah, it's so that's cool. But like now that's like fuel to my right. I want to prove them wrong, right? But yeah, it's so hard. Like, do what you love. It's so simple. It's simple yet hard at the same time. Chase your dreams, do what you love, and don't stop till you get there. And if you have a setback, reevaluate and just keep pushing forward. There's a it's on Disney too. It's called The Photographer. It's a documentary series, and they follow like five or six photographers. If you're a creative, please watch the five or six episodes. They're incredible. Seeing this setback that these guys, one of them is a Nat Geo guy, um, and seeing his setbacks, like wasn't a photographer. He wanted to be a marine biologist. Drops out of school, became a photography assistant. He had a camera when he was younger, but he had no interests. Like he just wanted to study animals, and then he found a way to show them off beautifully in his own creative way. His story is just incredible. He had so many setbacks, and he just kept pushing, pushing, and pushing through, and he finally did. And he made the cover of Nat Geo now like three or four times or something like that. It's incredible.
wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible. That's amazing. Okay, I have one last question for
Okay.
you. So, I love reading Florida literature. Patrick Smith is one of my favorites. A Land Remembered, I feel like you would love that book. It's basically just about the old Florida way of life, and it follows a family through like four generations. And it
Oh
starts
wow.
with Florida crackers, and they
Yeah.
actually came from Georgia. They settled in a hammock, and then the last generation is one that developed Palm Beach. And then at the
Oh
end,
wow.
he gets up and I'm not going to spoil it for you,
No.
but he stays true to what his family was focused on. So, what are some resources you think young people or anyone in general should be using to educate themselves more about wild Florida?
Oh, absolutely. Go to your local, like, go to a small town and go to the local museum. Like we have one in St. Cloud. Like, I literally didn't know we had one until the other day. Yeah, last week we were walking, getting coffee, and this lady walks by and she goes, "Hey, come visit the museum." I'm like, "Where?" Like, I didn't know we had one, right? So, going just reading articles. Like, um, we are so lucky to have the internet, right? Because
Yeah.
anything that you want to know is at your fingertips. Um, just search, go to the library, get a book. Like if I find a book that I go to the bookstore at least once a month. I don't believe in ordering off. I try not to use Amazon as much as possible, but it's hard because it's convenient. Um, the whole data center thing is crazy too. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's another reason why we need to vote. because there's a person pushing for those, and we don't need that person here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just picked up. It was crazy because I went out, and if I'm having a rough day taking pictures, like if I'm not really finding anything, I still enjoy it. I'll start photographing landscapes and flowers and stuff like that. But I'm like, okay, if I set out on a day, like I'm going to go find a snail kite. There's a one male snail kite, and I know where he's going to be at a conservation down the road. He sits in the same spot. And I'm like, I go to him every time. And I went out and photographed him last week, and I got some really just pretty portraits of him. And my wife had ordered me a book, and I have it in the other room, but it's a book on snail kites, right? So reading local stuff, watching documentaries. Path of the Panther is incredible. Like tells the story of the Florida wildlife corridor and what that means, not only to the panther, but to every other species that survives
Yeah.
down there, right? That thrives. So, YouTube, again, YouTube lover, hand up.
Me too.
There's so
I
much
love
on there, and
YouTube.
it's such a vital resource because it's hard. Like, I know it's hard for my niece, and it's hard for the younger generation to sit down and read. Um, I watched a kid at breakfast the other day, and my wife's like, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "What is he doing?" He iPad generation. He was probably 5 or 6, and he's on TikTok. I'm like, "Whoa!" And he's just sitting there, and it's like this every 5 seconds until he saw like maybe a Roblox video he liked, and then he would watch it for a little bit, and then it was on to the next thing. Um, so, and that's why I think where YouTube comes in handy is because motion picture is really nice, right? It keeps you engaged. And that's the hard part with storytelling. And like I did a post on um basically ignoring the algorithm, and that one blew up. Like that has 30,000 views now, and it's been shared 600 times, which is I never the whole post is just ignore the likes, right? Like don't let the algorithm let you down. And this is another thing for the creatives is like, so many people will look at their posts, like they'll keep going back with, well, how many likes do I have? Why do I have 12? Well, I have some posts that have 2,000 views, but only 80 likes. I know people with 30,000 followers and their posts get 80 likes, but you know what? They don't care because they're using Instagram as a portfolio, right? Here's my work. And that's kind of like my goal. But like, I know Instagram is such a good platform to reach people in this local area, um, as long as it's shared through the right avenues and it gets to reach the right people, right? Because the algorithm's a guessing game. Like, well, no one's never going to figure it out, right? Like it's always changing. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can learn a lot on even Instagram. Like I try not to
Yeah.
be on my phone a lot, but like as I try to stay up with the page and stuff like that, and then I find myself on it more. But I always make sure when I'm home, I have time with the family. We have, but then it's usually on a computer editing pictures. But yeah, um, just anything that you can think of, YouTube, books, even like go to the local, look up exhibitions, look up art fairs, look up the local festivals that are happening. Like you don't know what you're going to find there. Especially for a good cause. We have a monthly market here in my neighborhood, and I never knew. I walked by this gentleman who is handicapped, is a photographer, and I like never noticed it. So he just sits, his tent's in the corner, and he doesn't get a lot of traction. I walked over one day and I bought like 10 of his prints, his little prints, because like I wanted to support him, and that's what it's
Yeah.
all about, right? Surround yourself with like-minded people too is huge. Like I never thought I would be a part of conservation photography, and I have friends that are like 65 years old. I'm like the young guy in the group of older people. But yeah, so yeah, just read, write, watch YouTube. There's so many avenues, and again, it's talking to people. Talk to people that are older. Like you'll learn so much. Um, I've learned a lot at my job. Like always worked at a golf course, right? I was a teaching professional and playing professional for 12 years and didn't play PGA Tour. I wasn't a big name like that, but it was local stuff. And then
I used to play, yeah.
Yeah, and
I
then I
used to
started.
play tournament golf a little while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I got out of that, and then I was like, I'm gonna go work outside. Like, started getting my hands dirty, and that's kind of like what led into the photography thing. But like, I had no idea what I was doing over there. Like, I worked at a golf course, I understand operations, but the back end, like, you know, I've learned I'm the youngest guy on my crew by 24 years. Yeah, isn't that
Wow.
crazy? We're the only golf course that I've seen like that has. I always call it like the senior daycare. I always like, come on, guys, let's go outside. Time for recess. But yeah, no, yeah, they're. But I learned a lot for just talking to them. And one of them, I've been there 4 years now, and this guy, when I first met him, I'm like, he won't talk to me. I try to talk to everybody, so I get to know him friendly. We're all very close now, and I'm like, he hates me. And then finally, he started talking. He's the funniest guy, but he was actually the superintendent of a big ranch down here in Kenansville, and his love for ag. And like I've learned so much about ag from him, about conservation. Like they do a huge red cockaded woodpecker program out there, with nesting boxes and everything and counts, and um, population control of alligators down there. So if
Hmm.
someone comes in and collects the eggs, then they go to an alligator farm. They don't eat them or kill them or anything like that. But then they're eventually released back to the wild. So you know that's another part of agriculture that people don't understand is there's ranches like that are doing conservation work.
Thank you so much for just
Absolutely.
letting me interview you. And yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely.